It's been a little while since I've made a video on Lost Ark, so I thought I'd share where I'm at now. Somewhat recently I got to tier 3 by listening to people like Stoops, Seals, Saintone, and 1010. With that information I was able to increase my understanding of the game and fast pace the tier 3 semi-casually. In Lost Ark, a new player knows nothing. Each time you think you get an understanding, the goalpost has moved. Smilegate is pretty much said as much that tier 3 is the endgame, the content that they want the West to get into. The process to it just teaches us before we get there. Getting to tier 3 took me about 9 days. Looking at other MMOs in the past 5 years, this is a bit on the longer end but still within the usual range. A new expansion in WoW is like a day or two to endgame. An expansion isn't exactly flipping the script and remaking the game from the ground up, so getting to the new endgame is the incentive. New World was 6 days in which I went from joy and excitement to a grueling stop before quitting shortly after, introducing me to a repeating landscape of content and systems feeding into one another with no uniqueness outside of PvP, which was ruined by a game state dying on arrival. Classic WoW was 11 days that were not kind to a Tauren warrior questing by himself. A return to the old school mindset of monsters having large health pools and higher attacks, while all of yours miss. Getting to endgame takes many forms, but true to all MMO natures, the time before should be there for you to get acquainted with more complex systems. Some get there faster, others get there slower. Lost Ark isn't outside the norm. The beginning in Lost Ark is just you learning whatever class you chose, collecting chests of different types while questing, and you don't really know what purpose they serve. Once getting to combat level 50, the goalpost moves quite far. We are finally given a small taste of what endgame will be in Chaos and Abyssal Dungeons, Guardian Raids, just being a few that feed into the controversial system honing. My main takeaways from Stoops and 1010 for fast tracking to tier 3 was: do the island catch up system. Bonus tasks are important for materials, especially leap stones, and a way to get more gold. The welcome challenge helps bring us up to speed with the East. Doing both versions of Continent's dungeons give us additional rewards. Guardian Raids, Chaos and Abyssal Dungeons are a must. And Mari Shop is important for materials when crystals can get more materials than gold on the market. As any MMO goes, playing the market system becomes a part of life. Whether that's for engravings and honing materials, leveling a max level in New World, or purchasing consumables no matter the expansion in WoW. As long as you play the game, you'll earn the resources you need for progression. We have all these things to learn, so what about the story? Is the story that amazing? Not really. Except for Final Fantasy, MMOs these days don't really have anything amazing to tell. I think Lost Ark understands that, using cinematics to relate anything of importance to the player. Maybe not to the same degree, but New World could have used this if they had anything to show. It feels like so long ago World of Warcraft was known for some of the best cinematics in gaming. The story just isn't there anymore. The thing is, no one these days wants to read long text boxes from some rando NPC. It's better to just be direct in what the player should be told.
Challenge for you, Floyd. If you can read one full page of a Harry Potter book, I'll give $750,000 to whatever charitable organization you want to. We don't want to put pressure on you. We know you can't pronounce those words in that Harry Potter book, so we're gonna let you read Cat in the Hat.
Early on, the cinematics are just okay, nothing special. Phantom Palace was the first thing that I was blown away with the quality. From there, they step up from the previous ones. Maybe not to the same level as Palace, but it's a nice way to get the story across. Over time, the story becomes a lot more transparent, and I think the game definitely has something good for us to experience in the long term. South of Vern felt like a much more impactful plotline than previous continents, and while I've tried to avoid spoilers from the East, it seems like this is the direction we will be heading in the future, and that seems good to me. One of the big mistakes you can make in an MMO is your server. I thought I chose well in New World, picked a high pop server on release, then the queue times decided to compete with being as bad as Classic WoW's release. Lost Ark I started on a Xena and was wooed by the lies of friends that don't play MMOs. Should have known not to trust FPS and League players. Why does this suck in Lost Ark though? So much content is cross-server. First off, certain servers can't do the harder content, like the Moic boss in Punica. As time goes by, this becomes less and less of an issue. Another thing is if you get any Twitch drops, they are locked to that server you originally claimed them on. That's important for having multiple elements for dispatch quests. If that doesn't suck enough, you only get 2 power passes per account, not server. So if they were claimed before the switch, you have to drop gold at the stronghold to get those 2 tier 1 alts. I mean, it's not that bad, but still that gold could have went towards something else. In Lost Ark, gearing your character is probably one of the most complex things. Luckily, as mentioned before, the game moves the goalpost when it thinks you're ready. Leveling introduces you to the combat skills tree, card sets, gravings, and I guess quality. Once you reach tier 1, it's honing, tier 2 is gems, tier 3 is tripods. At endgame, Lost Ark has the most complicated gearing process of any game I can recall. However, once you watch 100 guides on each system and experience them, you might come to like it as I have. Sure, it all involves RNG, but what MMO doesn't? It's a part of the genre and always will be, and if you think otherwise, you're delusional. Failing a honing sucks since new content is locked behind higher eye level. You know it also sucks? Waiting 6 months in Classic to finally have your turn to get Onslaught Girdle after multiple other warriors got theirs with tank prio and then decided to quit. Hugging Keystone after Keystone trying to get your bitch trinket and dealing with players that don't know how to play their class? How about when Titan Forging was the thing, so you'd have to do multiple difficulty raids for an upgrade? And if you weren't in a guild, you'd have to pug each one. If you thought abyssal raids and dungeons are bad, try putting together a competent raid group for any heroic raid. Abyssal dungeons and raids aren't actually that difficult to pug. People are a lot more resilient in Lost Ark than WoW when it comes to wipes, and you don't have to spend time refilling after defeating a boss. Want a different example? Try doing chest runs in New World for upgrades after your faction set. Well, you could try if the game wasn't on death's doorstep. Honing is good and bad. Losing a chance never feels good. One of the great things is that we have some level of agency in upgrades with farming shards and getting raid up materials. Without the grind, we wouldn't have much to do. If gear was just handed to us, we wouldn't get the satisfaction of working towards earning something, and the game would feel a lot more lifeless. It's possible streamers and YouTubers influence the perception that you somehow are behind, not in a malicious way. By proxy, you're seeing content you're not able to do and getting upgrades you're nowhere near. If you stopped and looked around, a lot of other players would be at the same point. When I was younger playing WoW, I'd sit around inspecting the people wearing the endgame armor instead of focusing on my character's progression. Maybe games were more fun for people when they thought of endgame gear as a status symbol, instead of trying to find ways to invalidate them having it. Like the old adage goes, the grass is always greener on the other side. With Lost Ark, the grass was always greener, but new players were stuck in the weeds. Now the weeds have been cut and you can see it's not that difficult getting to late game, and even progressing in tier 3. People just needed the patience. All these events that people familiar with the game said were coming arrived, and even some to appease the complainers. Naruni Racing Event, Casual Guardian Raid, Express Event, and Arc Pass. A lot of these came later when I'd already reached higher eye level. It's taken me a long time to make this video, and now I've played for 18 days and got to 1400, but it helps other people. It's even easier now. The developers want you to do the more difficult content, not put it out there for barely anyone to do. It's always important to keep in mind that Lost Ark has been out in Korea for many years, which had multiple low points before they reached the level of success they have now. The West will not have to experience those same times of darkness when the game almost died. MMOs are grindy games and Lost Ark is no different. Many games placed a lot of the grind into leveling content before endgame. Smilegate took a different approach and didn't try to waste your time with an unfun leveling experience. Instead, opting to have players use generally the same amount of time for learning more complicated systems. Without that time, much of the player base would be alienated from taking part in the endgame content. Instead, Lost Ark appears to have the healthiest engagement with these more difficult things that I've experienced with an MMO in a long time. Look at World of Warcraft. Much of the player base avoids harder content like heroic plus raids, higher level mythic pluses, rated PvP, and even less of those players actively do all of them. There's too much to learn, and so much of it runs on the basis that you've already developed a level of understanding from over a decade of the game being out. In New World's case, there's a lack of endgame content to invest time in after reaching max level, and the content you can do is a couple slightly harder expeditions and corrupted breaches, outpost rush, as well as wars and invasions. The most consistent, meaningful endgame content is wars and invasions, but instead of being alienated for a lack of understanding, instead you can be kept from participating by player-based politics. As of now, Lost Ark in the West could be in a better place for endgame content. This is likely due to Amazon and Smilegate trying to juggle how to implement newer things into the game without causing such things like content fatigue for the players. Overall, I'd say I've had a pretty good experience with Lost Ark. The endgame content is not too overtuned, but not super easy. PvP is fun except when you get locked in infinite CC. Honing can be unfun when not successful, but it does not cross any boundaries that make me feel like I need to spend money to catch up or get ahead of others. After playing WoW for so long, I had become more familiar with guilds not really improving your gameplay experience, except for connecting you to other players. I'm very happy with the importance that this system has with players. Hopefully this was an enjoyable video that got the point across. If you want other people to see this video, leave a like and comment something you liked hearing about. If you want to see more content from me, then please subscribe.